Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. We are so delighted that you have joined us. On behalf of my colleagues at VIA Institute on Character, I just want to really appreciate you making the time to be with us and to learn more about our Workplaces at Their Best new launch, which is very exciting. If you have worked with our programs and services teams before, you know how very much we appreciate and enjoy engaging and interacting with everyone. And today, in the interest of time, we'll do a little bit less of that than we normally would. So I'll start by sharing with you, I'm Jillian Copley, and I am the President and Chief Programs and Services Officer here at VIA. And what that would normally be followed by is to say, let us know where you're from in the chat. But because we are going to keep it brief today, I'm going to not do that. But what I do very, I think, importantly and inspiringly want to share with you is that when we have introduced this work to folks and invited them to join us, 400 people from around the world and nearly every continent on our planet have decided to join in. And I say that because I know for me, just to pause and appreciate the fact that there are at least 400 people around the world who are saying, yes, I want to show up as my very best self, and I want to help others do the same, which is certainly no small matter. And we certainly deeply appreciate that intention and your interest in being with us for the next few minutes. So as I said, in the interest of time, we'll try to be relatively brief this morning or afternoon, as the case may be where you are. So I'll share about 30 minutes of where this work has been and where it is now and what we are inviting you to engage in with us. And we'll do Q&A at the end. We'll have probably about 10 minutes or so to do that. But in addition to the end, I really, on behalf of my teammates who are here, some of our three terrific colleagues at VIA Institute from our Programs and Services team, they are going to be active in the chat with us to respond to any questions that emerge as you're seeing content and hearing what we have to share. So Alicia and Alex will be responding in the moment. And Moxie's going to be looking for those trends or themes or things that we should discuss at the end. But by all means, please use that opportunity liberally. If there's anything we don't get to, we'll be more than delighted to try to follow up with you afterwards. But do please just let us know what you need and how you're reacting. So with that in mind, I'm going to jump right in. I know for many of you on this call, seeing some of the names pop up, it's just fantastic to see folks that have been long-term friends and colleagues of VIA, and certainly some new names as well. But for those of you who are new, our work at VIA Institute on Character is grounded in the seminal and founding work of Marty Seligman and Chris Peterson, who led 50 global scientists to really discern who we are at our very best in humanity. And with that research over 3 years, they captured that work in a handbook that is the Handbook of Virtues and Character, and then created this VIA instrument to help people understand, their unique profile. And so since that time, the VIA has been taken by nearly 35 million people around the globe. And our work since the very beginning has been all about catalyzing global human flourishing. And our mission is both to advance the science as well as the practice. So we are interested, keenly invested in the rigor of the science that underpins everything we do. And so with that very aspirational idea of catalyzing global human flourishing, it seemed very reasonable to us to think about our workplaces. And I say that because we know that for most adults, we spend about 40% of our waking hours at work. And so for many of us, that's a plus minus. Some of us find that to be life affirming. Some of us find it to be life depleting. I'm curious how you think it's going. And I'd love actually just to take 1 minute, even though I said we didn't have a ton of time to do it, to just take a guess at this very particular question. which is what percent of people do you think, and in particular those who are non-executives, let's limit it to that, folks who are working today, what percent would you say think of work as having job satisfaction, work satisfaction, and or think that they're having a positive employment experience? Can you just drop a number in the chat for me? And then Moxie, maybe I'll have you share some of those out if you will.
All right, I'm seeing quite a few, 25%, 40, 15, several 35, a 40. We've got as low as 17s. Very specific with the 32, and I see as high as 90. We've got 66, 20. Very wide range here.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for jumping in. And Moxie, thanks for helping with reporting out. I mean, this is a wise group. So you're really close in terms of what at least this one research study has said. And I'm sure you know of many of them. But the 2024 Global Culture Report from O.C. Tanner Institute indicates that, in fact, when non-executives are asked, and this is 42,000 people that they surveyed in 27 countries, about a third of the people who are non-executives, meaning non-CEOs, non-C-suite folks, indicated that, in fact, they didn't have job satisfaction and they were distinctly not having a positive experience at work. And so what we ask then is, well, if we're spending 40% of our time at work, we know that changes our lives in terms of what we take home and what we take out into the community. What is actually possible here? Well, the good news is from the thousands, literally, of character strengths research studies that have been done with VIA's inception, we know about a tremendous number of possibilities. This is just a sampling of some of the beautiful work that's been done that helps us understand when we activate the best in ourselves at work, what is possible. So what we have done in these intervening years, last several years really, is to combine this very robust body of science with organizational development luminaries really around the globe, including folks like Kuz and Posner, who are in their 9th edition of leadership work, and the Society for Organizational Learning experts, and the likes of John Kotter and his thinking on change. And we've created a very robust, as it turns out, but very actionable model to create real change in organizations through the activation of character strengths. And I'm just going to quickly introduce it here. But basically, we know that organizations, no matter what they're doing in the world, very oversimplified, but are acting on 3 things. They're creating a vision for what they want to see happen. They are identifying smart and particular strategies to their organization that give them a unique advantage or opportunity. And then they are executing with excellent operations to make those things actually seeable, doable in the world and creating both outcomes and impact. But at the core of all of that effort, if you will, are really the people, of course. That's at the individual level, the relational level, and the team level, ultimately stacking up to the organization. And we know that the way that those people interact with one another and the relationships they form and the teams they build are what shape a culture, positive culture or not. But we know it's possible to shape a culture in a positive manner through strengths interventions. And so with this theory of action in mind, we have taken people in the last several years, organizations, through a journey of knowing, seeing, and applying their strengths at these individual relationship, team, and organizational level. And we've mapped out benchmarks that will help people get to each one of those levels. There's a set of 5 benchmarks with 3 successive steps or phases, if you will, to begin to just map the journey of what it looks like to create a positive culture that increases engagement, relationships, and performance. And so over the years, we have, of course, studied this work and continue to iterate and continuously improve. And we've done that in the work with more than 80 organizations across many different functions and sectors, who have been truly our active partners in helping us refine and improve the model as we've gone over these years. And with each cohort uh, integration and intervention, we have been adamant about doing what we can to learn with outside researchers about the outcomes of the work, the impact of the work, and really the pieces and parts that were working and weren't. And what we have found in the last year have again reaffirmed our theory of action. We'll be producing an impact report shortly, and if that's something that you would like to see, by all means, let us know in that survey at the end that we'll be sharing. But I want to share with you just a quick page from what will be coming out in that report, so you get a sense of the real potential for what's possible when we work with organizations. So what we know is that I mentioned that we have these benchmark categories, and that in fact we have progressed in our most recent cohort each one of those organizations on every one of those benchmark categories. You see the light blue is where they started and the dark blue is where they finished. So these are significant outcomes in the sense of we know this is a tested path to get to real impact. And I'll show you what I mean by that. We know that strengths accounted for significant variance in workplace experiences. So these numbers in terms of accounting for variance are really high in this population. We know that for all three areas that we care, or that, not that we only care about, but have focused our interest in around relationships, engagement, and work performance, we could capture a tremendous amount of variance by changing the focus on strengths. We also know from ordinal regression that strengths were significantly and strongly tied to positive outcomes in all measures, in the sense of the more likely the use of strengths made it so much more likely that they were going to see improvement in each one of these areas. So there's so much more to share about what we found. I'll share one more quick thing. But strengths use went up in all 7 measured categories, meaning we were able to get to the point with these organizations, as we have in the past, of not just knowing their strengths, but being able to act on them within their relationships, in their teams, and in their organization. And that when they did, there was a 26% increase in the number of individuals who achieved results they wanted by using their strengths. So these are the most recent findings from the group of organizations we worked with this year. And so our strong interest in VIA is that we want to see these tools used by others around the world. Our greatest aspiration, as you saw in our vision, is for global flourishing. And for that, we want to make whatever we're learning as available as we possibly can for others to create positive action in their worlds, in their organizations, with their teams, et cetera. And so we've translated the work we've done in these last several years with organizations into a number of programs and services that we want to share with you now. And so those things include the following. I'm going to quickly go over 4 different items, and then we'll go more deeply into each one of them. So the first one is making single courses available for individuals. So if a professional is interested, for instance, in how to activate her character strengths in the workplace, this would be the option. Right. So if someone is interested, and we'll talk more about this in a minute, and for instance, strengths-based leadership, this would be an option to take a singular course. A second option then would be to take a series of the 5 courses that we have created as a direct output from the work that we have done in these last several years. The third option then is more organizational or team-based. And this option is to use all of those courses plus an implementation guide that would help a team or an organization kind of map the path of complete change for that organization to create the positive culture that we know will support the development of expanded engagement, expanded relationships, and expanded performance. And then lastly, because we are interested in getting as many people as we possibly can and support to do so, to use this work in the field. So for those folks who are organizational development consultants, we are excited to share with you the depth of what we've learned and certainly to learn from others, to equip people, add to their capacity to deliver strengths-based and positive change in organizations. So that's the fourth opportunity that has resulted from the work we've created in these last several years. So I want to take just a minute to go into each one of those things. Um, and Moxie, before I do, is there anything that we need to pause and address before we keep moving?
Nope. Alicia and Alex are doing a great job answering questions in the moment. I think we're
Okay.
going to have some great questions in the survey at the end.
Okay, fantastic. Oh my gosh, it's good to work with an amazing team. Thank you to all of you guys this morning. Um, so let's go ahead then and look at option one, those single courses. And so here's the selection of what these courses look like. They'll be available September 23rd on the VIA site. You can download them. They'll be placed in your dashboard with the other options you've selected and the ways you've selected to work with VIA. But in each one of these, I'll talk just a little bit about what's included, and certainly happy to send more details in the interim before we get started September 23rd with making that all publicly available. But you at your best is really that introductory piece. So taking the VIA survey, what the survey means, where that work comes from, and then a beginning bit about how you begin to activate that within my organization. What's my line of sight? How can I impact my daily tasks and routines through the use of my strengths? So it's that very fundamental introductory course. And then the second, work relationships at their best, begins to deal with how we can build and strengthen our relationships through the activation of strengths, both in terms of knowing our own and recognizing those in others. And then, of course, how can we not only acknowledge and appreciate strengths, but sometimes what can be even harder is accepting those strengths. And then, of course, when all those things aren't happening in perfect fluidity, what are the strengths-based tools we can use to repair relationships that may have gotten off the track? So this is the type of thing that's addressed here in work relationships. And then when we look at teams at their best, we're really talking about looking at teams through a strengths-based lens in terms of how they prioritize, how they function, what roles people play, and how that can be seen, almost as an orchestra, right? Well, we're dialing up and dialing down together as a group, where we might have gaps, where we might have opportunities. And then leaders at their best is really all about, again, knowing your strengths so that you can lead with a sense of authenticity and that you can define your own strengths-based personal leadership style to lead your organization or to lead your team, but also what it looks like to model those strengths in practice. And then, of course, to provide things like strengths-based feedback or to do, full-blown strengths-based performance reviews. That's all captured inside Leaders at Their Best. And then when we look at the final course that's shown here, Change at Its Best, we go through three successive segments here. The first, of course, is about the change process and what are those steps and how we can access those through a strengths-based perspective. The second is how we actually lead the people going through the change. And then the third, of course, is attention to the leader, his or herself experiencing change and what is required and helpful there, yet again, through a strengths-based lens. So again, these are courses that will be available September 23rd for individual purchase or as a learning path. So we're making them available singularly or available to purchase in full for all five. And with the completion of those, offering a credential for people who complete that full learning pathway. Before we go on to the next steps, though, I wanted to take just a quick dive into what the courses look like themselves. So you'll have a sense really of their robustness. I mean, we have translated pretty much everything that we have experienced in these last number of years working with people and organizations into these courses to make them available, actionable for as many people who are interested. So the list you see here, the menu, just gives you a simple idea, an abbreviated idea of what's covered in that first course that I mentioned. I hope you get a sense that they are very comprehensive. But because they are comprehensive, of course, we don't want to leave people reading, 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 reading. So we have made them at every turn as interactive as possible. So what you see here is just a simple example where you're engaging with some key concepts, but truly are engaging in the sense of clicking and responding and moving with as best we can inside a virtual space. We've also made them applied we do have the academic support, research support behind everything we do, and we want to make that readily available to anyone who is interested. But we want to keep them grounded in application so that people are not only building their knowledge and that stays inert, but it becomes very active and lived in the world. And so what you see here are two leaders who are talking about what it means to lead with honesty and authenticity and how sometimes things can get in the way of that and what we do about those things. We're also very keen to make it adaptive. We know everybody is not interested in um, acting on the content in the same way. So this is inside our leadership course, and it is how a leader might go about getting involved in job crafting at the very early stages with someone with whom they work. And the opportunity here, of course, is to do that virtually online or to go ahead and just download the resources and do it face to face. Many other options for how we've created a sense of adaptability inside each one of these courses and all of the digital resources we provide. So as I mentioned, the opportunity is if an individual is interested in completing the learning pathway, we'll be delighted to make badges available so that they can share that accomplishment with others. So that's really the first two that are really all about the individual. When we move to the next section, now we're talking about teams and organizations. And these two will be available September 23rd, and I'll explain a little bit more about that October 11th date in just a moment. But what we have here then are not only the 5 courses you just saw, but also a sixth option, well, I'll explain in just a minute, which is an option for certification. So in addition to the courses that are available here, there is an implementation guide that we are also making available. And this implementation guide, again, is in the same way that the courses encapsulate the content of what people will need to be able to know, do, etc., in order to begin to create strengths-based practices. The implementation guide is all about how it is we create change at the organizational level using these tools and many, many, many others. And it's very much a turnkey resource, meaning it takes you from A to Z if you are a team leader or an organizational leader in terms of creating organizational change in your organization that leads to increased engagement performance and expanded relationships. So to give you just a sense of the robustness of what that implementation guide looks like, this is just the first couple pages of the first section. And within it, we associate each one of the sections to the milestones and the benchmarks that underpin the program. We give a sense for how much time this work will take, both in terms of weeks and or hours. You'll also see here really a top to bottom planning. So start with this, then do this, then do this. These are the people who need to be involved. And again, there's multiple options here. It's highly adaptive. Our intent was to give as much detail as possible so people could choose, pick and choose what will work best for them in their own organizations, in their own contexts and situations. And then finally, what you see here are the links to all of the resources associated with acting on those implementation suggestions. So it's not that we say, form a team. It's here are the ideas to form a team, and here are the things you need to think about and select for. Here's the email that would go with identifying that guiding team. Here's the possible first agenda. Here are the resources you'll need. Here's the learning experience you'll need. So every single thing that a team leader or an organizational leader might need are all linked and available. What I'm showing you right now is the PDF guide, but all of this information is also built as a course. Um, so it's easy access inside the courses. Um, I wanted to mention that the October 11th date is the date that we will have our first onboarding session. So if, for instance, an organization decides to use or a team decides to use the courses and the implementation guide, we don't want to leave you to just kind of fend for yourself to figure it out because it's a lot. But do want to onboard people with those beginning sessions, purely optional, but there is a resource. And what you see here in the list on the right-hand side of the screen is that we'll also be offering Q&A and learning community sessions on a monthly basis for those who are interested in pursuing this work. What we know from the work we have completed to date is that this sense of cohort learning, peer-to-peer learning from people who are enacting strengths-based change to create positive cultures is invaluable. Year after year, people have mentioned to us how important that's been to them. So we want to continue to extend that to the greatest degree possible. So the next thing I want to share then is, oh, I'm sorry, I was moving on before I was ready to, is that if an organization decides to pursue this work, again, we're offering the opportunity to be certified, to be recognized as such. And here are just an idea of the simple requirements to earn that certification. I mentioned that there's an implementation workbook for certification I'd circle back to, and that's what you see listed here. And that we're asking, of course, the completion of courses, as you can imagine, but we're also sharing our benchmarks for people to look at pre and post to understand outcomes, and then also pre and post impact surveys, so that organizations themselves can really share back to themselves the progress they're making and the impact they're making. And that's important in terms of what we would see as being certified as a strengths-based workplace. So the final area that I want to mention is this notion of a third certification, and this is particular to organizational development consultants. So those folks who are practicing organizational development consultants who just want to add another capacity to their toolkit, if you will, we would be thrilled to share this work and to have you engage with us and to use these tools and resources. And so what this will involve is 3 immersive learning days with VIA senior leaders and 3 follow-up virtual half days, or we're also going to be offering a virtual experience. And I am very, very pleased to say that VIA is honored to introduce this work with the Canadian Positive Psychology Association on September 30th. And so it'll be September 30th, October 1st and 2nd, and then 3 virtual follow-up days. That November 4th date is a public offering, and that will be virtual. Moxie, do you mind sharing in the chat, please, the registration for that CPPA collaboration?
Absolutely.
Great, thank you so much. So I would encourage you to look at that soon if you're interested in the CPPA collaboration, because we have a limited number of spaces, and we've already shared that with that group, so they are beginning to fill. But for certification, beyond the experience of participating in that, we would be looking for a demonstration of experience, expertise in professional statement, and certainly can talk more about that with folks who might be interested. But as a result of participating in the certification, there will be 12 months access to the Hub 24, which is all of the resources, all of the things that I've just shared. and of course the implementation guide. And again, an intentional ongoing learning community to support folks in their continued growth and development as they're working with organizations. We just find over and over again, there's nothing like a peer who's experiencing the same things, whether it's at the consultant level or the leader level or inside organizations, to really learn and grow together and advance practice. And then finally, for those who are interested and who meet requirements, um, for folks who become certified, listing in VIA's 2025 professional directory on our VIA website. Again, just supporting our interest of connecting people who are interested in doing this work and who are seeking experts in the field who can lead and guide them. We know that there is a tremendously growing base of folks within the 10,000 folks who come to our website every day who are interested in transforming their organizations to be strengths-based organizations because they're learning of the positive impacts that can be created.
Jillian, I love that last point. We had a question in the chat from Kimberly about building a brand or market for folks to become certified. So we do have that listing. Is there anything else you want to talk about with building that brand and helping with the market?
Yeah, so I think it's probably a much longer conversation that we could have about this, but we are fielding requests, of course, all the time for folks who are interested in practitioners in the field who are expert in driving organization transformation, specifically with the activation of what's best in ourselves, our character strengths, in order to create impacts and real impacts. I mean, the things we've measured in terms of, again, engagement, relationships, and performance. And so we are delighted to move towards a model where we are equipping, supporting, connecting people who are interested in creating that positive network around the world. So with that, I have been talking for quite a while. As I said, about 35 minutes. And so we have about 10 minutes for any type of question, Moxie, that you've heard that you want to bring up to the group that we maybe haven't answered, or maybe has been repeated enough times that we need to share with the whole group. Be delighted to move to that now.
Yeah, there were a lot of questions just about more details and more numbers, things that we can share in our impact report. So anyone who has a question about specific details like that, when we share the survey that you see on the screen, the very last question has space for you to ask additional questions. Please make sure to include those questions there so we can send you the answer.
Right.
And then we do have a lot of people asking about prices, and we are happy to send the price sheet. Just make sure you include that in your feedback and we'll send you that sheet.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry to interrupt. There was one question in the chat that I think could be highlighted from Treya. She said, are there any certain requirements or certifications required to attend the CPPA event? So I just wanted to highlight that really quick.
Yeah. Oh, thanks so much, Alicia. That's a great question. So because the certification is really intended for folks who are already practicing as organizational consultants, we would invite folks who are familiar with organizational development to join us, because we will not be addressing the very basics of organizational development. We'll be addressing the character strengths application inside organizational development. So that's the invitation I would share. Moxie or Alicia or Alex, is there anything else that's bubbled up that would be useful for us to address in our last 5 minutes here?
Did we talk about Kimberly in the chat discussing, well, not discussing, but saying that she was interested to know more about how VIA supports their certifiers or people who are certified?
Yeah, so we this is a first area of focus for VIA. But based on our experience, again, with organizations to this point, that ongoing learning community is critical. And so we really see that at the practitioner level, as well as meaning the organizational development consultant level, as well as the organization level. And so the intention with certification is there will be monthly gatherings. for folks to continue to share their practice, to build their practice. So it'll be both extended learning opportunity as well as peer-to-peer learning opportunity to exchange new developments in people's practice, questions that come to the fore, innovative solutions, et cetera, et cetera. So we're very excited about the potential for a truly robust learning community of practitioners in the field. Alex, did that seem to answer the question as you understood it?
Looks like Kimberly clarified, saying my question was more about externally building businesses for practitioners or building business for practitioners.
Got it. Got it. That kind of support. Got it. Now I'm with you. I'm at a little disadvantage not seeing the chat. My apologies. So the second part of that question is when we talk about having our certified folks be identified on our website, our intention is to make them available and accessible for other people to read your profiles, get interested in you, and then for us to connect you. Truly, our maybe grandiose aspiration from our vision is global flourishing. And that's the only way we get there is if we're activating a network of people who are both connected to one another as practitioners and connected to the folks who want to seek them out. So our intention is both to promote the learning community and to make the connections. Anything else we should address, you all?
Yes, Jillian, we do have a question from someone asking about the positive impacts on organizations who have participated. Can you share a little bit more about the success stories that we've seen?
Yeah. So some of my favorite stories happen honestly at the very individual level. So let me say that first. So I am always touched by the way in which two things happen, and they happen routinely. One is people will experience a change in their work life, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. And they find that it is so powerful, they take it home to their home lives, and their home lives become transformed as well, in the sense of a repaired relationship with a child, improved relationship with a partner. So we hear these kinds of things all the time. There are stories that will be included and quotes that will be included in the impact report that you'll see if you're interested in that, that will evidence some of those things. So at the very granular level, we see that it not only stops at work, but it permeates into families and communities. And that, I think, is nothing short of world changing, actually. But we also see, again, the interpersonal impact at work in the sense of colleagues who couldn't get along or and get work done, which obviously is the lifeblood of an organization, right? To have strong, robust relationships where you can work together, build trust, and ultimately build the kind of space you need to innovate and create together. And so what we see is that people are able to work those issues out in an entirely new way, back to the originating theory of action that I shared, that we know if we can make all those things work better, the individual understanding who they are at their best, the way they're relating to other people, and the way they're building their teams, we can impact those three things that we've identified most closely related to this work, which is engagement, improved relationships, and ultimately performance. And our studies with each successive cohort have confirmed that over and over again, as yet again happened this year, with, again, just a very quick look at the impact work that I shared earlier. All right. Anything else, you all?
I believe that's everything, Jillian.
All right, great. Well, thank you all so very much for joining us today. Again, on behalf of our whole team, not just those that I am very honored to share this webinar stage with, if you will. Alicia, Alex, and Moxie, but our entire team. Really just want to thank you for joining us today and appreciate your interest, and we'll be delighted to hear from you at any time via the type form that we just shared, or certainly reach out to us personally. We're eager to hear your feedback and eager to respond to any questions you might have. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a great afternoon or a great evening, as the case may be.